Okay, so he was like insisting he come to the office?
Yeah. Yeah. And I finally thought, okay, Michelle, just whatever. So he came to the office, and we actually, well, first of all, I sent him to the new office employee to do some reports or to look over some reports she did.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually, if like he likes to do those reports, and normally he would have wanted to double check everything, and he actually accepted everything she did. And so I was glad I sent him to her first, because otherwise I would have been tense during our meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So they got that done, and then he came in my office, and we actually had a meeting together where there was no conflict, because I had it in my head that that if he tried to micromanage and take control, I was just going to very calmly tell him no.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm just doing my job and he needs to let me do it. So
yeah, like have those boundaries, right? Like, these are my boundaries. Yeah. He's not going to invade my space.
Yeah. So I wasn't waiting or like almost, I don't really pick fights, but I'm always so guarded that fights start because I'm so defensive.
Yes, yeah.
And so I went into it not defensive, just knowing that that's how I would respond.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we had a good meeting. So, but I was doing a little, while I was waiting for you, I did a little refresher on that trauma bonding. I looked that up.
Yeah.
And I know that I need to be careful that I don't kind of get sucked back in.
Yeah, taking responsibility for his problems. Or his, right. Like him thinking there's problems and getting angry, he can't handle it, and then projecting it onto you like it's your job to fix it.
Right.
And it comes across like you're the cause of the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very offensive. That's why you're always on the defense.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and so if you just take that, that's why your boundaries have to be very clear, aware, because because if you lose touch with those, you internalize his shit, and it becomes your shit, and then there's all that. How's that feel, right?
Right.
That's where it's like, now you're gonna have a panic attack. Now you're gonna go lay in the snow and want to die. Now you're gonna go pull weeds or knit real hard. Because you got to get that, it's like a war. It's a war zone, and it's ridiculous.
It is.
And it's hard to see because you're invested in it. You never question it, right? Never question the whole thing.
Right.
And then you're participating in it because, you want everything to work. But when it's constantly being offended, just it's trauma.
Yeah.
Anyways, trauma bonding. Right, and then if you're personally getting something out of it, and that's where you have that power, right? We were like, you have control here. You do have power. Yeah. You do have choices. You're not... Did that help at all, talking about that? Like, you're not powerless.
Yes.
The power comes from you facing your fear. That's the one thing you've never done. That's the one thing that doesn't feel that you can handle it. So, and because of that, you're held bondage, right? Or held, Is that the right terminology? You're in bondage,
That's what it feels like, yeah.
Yeah, like a captured servant, like a slave. But the only reason why you are is because the way to get out you refuse to take because you're scared of it. Or just scared of the loss, scared that, well, what if my dad doesn't want me on the job? Who am I without this role? Do I even know what I would do to make money? How do I evaluate my sense of worth when it's been defined by this job? It's like your identity's all wrapped up in it. That identity getting wrapped up in it is why this perpetuates. You know, the loss of sense of yourself. Like without it, do you have a sense of who you are really?
You know, I had a phone call this morning from someone I haven't seen for a long time, and he said, "Yeah, my sister told me that you're running the farm now, and so I just want to talk to you about this program we have." And I was really taken aback, like when he said, "You're running the farm now."
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know what my feelings are about that. Like, I think my first feeling was, I'm not running the farm, but I really am. But yeah, I need to.
Okay, well, who is running the farm? And your first instinct, who's running the farm?
Well, I really am.
I know, but your first instinct, not the truth.
Oh,
like when you envision the farm in your mind, who's running the farm?
Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
that's your captor, right?
Right.
That's the identity. Like this is his farm. This is him.
Right. Yeah. And not my money went through my head quickly. Because that's something he always says. This is not your farm. It's not your money. Well, I know. But a lot of people manage places that aren't theirs and they get money.
Yeah, that when he says stuff like that to you, what's the point? Is that a threat? Do you feel like that's a threat? Is it a threatening statement?
Yes. Like he could.
Like you won't survive without me.
Right.
Yeah, see, that's that primal fear of abandonment. Like you can't survive on your own. So he's really saying you can't. That is like the essence of Stockholm Syndrome, right?
Yeah, and he tells me you are dispensable. Everyone is dispensable.
Yeah, how'd that feel coming from your dad?
It's hurtful. I mean, I'm a daughter.
Yeah, he doesn't care. So he's threatening you, right? As if you're nobody.
Yeah, it'd be the same as if I was.
So can you see why you went above and beyond emotionally with this?
Yeah. Yeah, just trying to
not be dispensable.
Trying to be yeah. Yep.
I don't want my father to dispense of me. You know, it is like pretty hollow if you think about it. Like there's no sense of you in it. There is no you. It's all your dad, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So in narcissism, so here's a simple way to think of it. Narcissism, did I talk to you about this before? Narcissism is something we all have. It's a desire to be special. It's really a desire to, it's like, it is ego-based, but it's a desire, again, to fulfill that third hierarchy of need, which is, I want to feel that I have something to give, that I'm lovable, that I can love others and they'll love me in response. Like there's a desire to just be accepted and feeling safe in a pack, because we're pack animals, we're tribal, right? Mm-hmm. So that desire to be special means I want to be set apart. I want to have my own space. It's like a territory. I want to feel I have a territory of my own in this pack. The problem arises, and some of that is healthy, right? The problem arises when it becomes their survival to be special. And so they'll do anything. It's like an addiction. Like they get super euphoria on the idea that they're special and unique. So what they do is they have to set themselves apart. So what they do to do that is they degrade everybody around them.
Oh, that's so, yeah.
Well, and then in the process, it is very much, think of it like, I read this somewhere, I thought it was awesome. It's like being up on a stage He's the one everybody has to look at, and it's your job to support him on stage. You're not allowed to be on stage. You have to clap, and you have to tell him he's the best, and it's like worship. He needs to be worshipped, because that's kind of like what gives him the sense of safety. So it's not just I'm special, it's you're all pieces of shit compared to me. So that's the path. That's a pathological narcissism. Right? That's where they can't, it has nothing to do with you. It really literally has nothing to do with you. He would be that way to anybody, including your mother, including his siblings, including people at work. It's like the same exact, it has nothing to do with you. It's the same, because it's coming from his need to be superior, right?
Right.
So it doesn't matter who you are. It has to turn. Yeah, it has to be. So that's pathological. That's like the aggressive narcissist. There's passive narcissism too, and I think you and I have talked about this before. Because what happens to people who are in the role of, it's my job to make him feel special, right? There's two parts. It's my job to be him and to emulate him. Okay. Those people tend to be, when you mimic, those people tend to end up being pathological narcissists too. Okay. But there's also, it's my job to make sure he knows how amazing he is. So you're supplying him with specialness. Right? It's your job. You become a slave to this person to do whatever he needs or she needs to make sure they are superior. They are number one. Right? Yeah. So you become what's called a co-narcissist. Because it's your job to support his specialness. So you see how you end up, for example, like in like your eating disorder. Typically, people who have co-narcissism have eating disorders because it's your only way to separate yourself from it. So it's like my own thing that makes me special. It's like a side coping mechanism.
Yep.
Are you following me right now?
Oh, yes, very much. All the stuff is going through my head, like seeing myself in all those roles.
Yeah. Well, and then, so you end up being, it's like a slave. You're a slave. Slavery. So co-narcissism, typically the co-narcissist is the person that's willing to get help, but you never question the narcissist is potentially the problem. You just think you're flawed. You're not good enough. You don't do a good job, and you have all these shame problems too with it. The other thing is you have oftentimes it comes with this kind of like a consistent long-term PTSD. So typically when someone thinks about PTSD, what they're thinking about is like coming back from war or having an extremely traumatic event that you have like recalls and dreams and all sorts of like social trauma, right? Or not social, environmental like fears that come up, anxieties. And this is actually worse. Complex PTSD is for people who've been held hostage, people who've been like molested or psychologically molested, which is where I think you've had issues, but you've also been molested too, right?
Yeah,
in church.
Yeah.
But this is worse. Yeah. Like you could say you're going to have a temporary PTSD, but becomes complex long term. So people who have this complex or CPTSD, complex PTSD, have like you lose touch with who you are because you're being basically used as to be manipulated, and basically, it's like that emotional incest. You're not getting physically abused, but emotionally you are hollow, and you literally don't have a soul. At some point you died soul wise because you became hostage to everything this concept or person wanted you to be. So you lose touch with your whole sense of self. You have no concept of who you are because you are what they told you to be, which is always emphasizing how special they are.
Yep.
And they'll claim it. They'll claim your success is theirs.
Yep.
You're good because I made you that way.
Yep.
So part of the recovery process is first and foremost recognizing that you've done the best job you can with everything you've known. You've never been harmed to anybody. You didn't know there was and all of that. But what child doesn't want the approval of their parent?
Yeah.
None of those are wrong. You know, and it also helps to see the brokenness of your father, like complete child. He's like a child. There's no so part of the PTSD or the complex PTSD is assuming this person is credible. And so when they fire at you and they are like coming at you, you actually negotiate with them because you actually believe they must know more than you. They must know more. They must have more knowledge. They must. Does that make sense? So so part of the problem with this is that you continue to see him as an equal. Or even just someone that's got, and there's times often in these situations where they do show little signs of kindness. Little kinds. Yeah. And then you'll think, oh my God, he's so much better. Things are changing. Oh, hell no, they're not. Just because he didn't abuse you doesn't mean he's kind. You know what I mean? Just because he didn't punch you in the face doesn't mean it's not abuse. He's being nice to me because he could have beat me up and he didn't, you know? So often what keeps people in this are these little glimpses that are perceived kindnesses. It's like he gave you crumbs. I'm giving you crumbs. And you think that that's nice. So in terms of like imagine that he's your owner and you're starving to death. He's not feeding you. The moment he gives you food, how does that feel?
That he's being nice to me.
Yeah, but he's starving you. You see the overlying starvation?
Yeah.
But the moment he decides, I think I'll give her some food. All of a sudden, the person on the receiving end is like, oh, that was really sweet because he chose not to starve me. So it's almost like you're not seeing it from that wider perspective, and they believe it's because of a survival mechanism to do just whatever you're told to survive in that situation. So typically in this, that narcissistic abuse, Stockholm syndrome environment, that is also complex, that complex PTSD is not only do you have a hollow sense of nothing in terms of who you are, but the person that you're basically accommodating to, you've adapted everything to their needs. Everything.
Yeah.
So, there's more to it than that, too.
And I think he did it to me more than my sisters.
Well, that's probably because you were wanting his love and affection more so. You might have been a big supply for him too. Like in public, he might have been like, my daughter's amazing, like a supply source, meaning he's using you as a source of, her worth ethic. I don't know. He might have put you on a pedestal in certain situations. Did you ever do that?
Yeah.
She works so hard. She's not. Yeah.
If we are with peers in our industry,
Right. So you'll hear that, but then when you get back to the farm, he's like literally shocking you like a cow.
Yeah, and like he doesn't trust me with anything, and he won't share information with me because I might get smarter than him.
And you always have to be submissive to him because he owns it's his identity. Yeah. So if you just so happen to, he doesn't know how to separate you from him. He owns you. You are a slave. And your job is to promote him. So if you're doing well and the spotlight's on you, you're a threat, even though you're his daughter. But notice how that has nothing to do with you.
Right.
Nothing at all.
Yeah.
It does not matter.
I wonder if that was the source or part of the source of my illnesses, like the constant stomach aches and the
Totally. That's called psychosomatic. Yeah. Remember, I was like, you're in permanent fight or flight, and your stomach, your gut stops churning, everything. Yes, that is absolutely true. 100%. See, all this stuff you're now kind of clicking together.
Right. So the illness was either my way to make myself separate from my dad.
In a way, yeah, you're repressing a lot of your own shit. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, things are really starting to click with me.
Yeah, and how do you recover? You have to recognize, first of all, you got to forgive yourself for not, you trusted the situation. It's really easy. That's like, you're so normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, hello, anybody under the circumstances would do what you did with what you were wanting out of it and what you got out of it. You know, there's a lot that goes into it, but you wanted his approval. And you never questioned his integrity. You see how those two together, wanting approval, not questioning the integrity of the person, you've given the rights to your approvability. You gave him the, like, God signature, is she good enough? Right? We could actually say that's the foundation of the whole thing, because if you took ownership of it internally, defined your own worth from the truth from within, would you need someone and want someone so desperately to approve of you? No. I think it's important too to see, how is he going to approve of you if he doesn't even approve of himself?
Right.
And if he says he does, he's basing it on these kind of like rigid, extrinsic, far-reaching accomplishments that require mental illness to get, right?
Mm-hmm.
So his resume, if you want to call it, doesn't come from his soul or his actual truth. It's coming from, I have a motorcycle. I have this much money. You know, those are his narcissistic supply. The supply that makes him on stage look real special. Like, I have to be the most special person here. So, and obviously that comes from very foundational feelings of, I'm inferior. And I got to prove otherwise. I'm inferior and I have to prove otherwise. And he's proving otherwise. But he's, you could say, addicted to it.
Right.
It's really sad. Very sad. I'm not saying this is cool and we should all do it. I'm just saying, let's just give it a story. Give him a story so you can forgive him. He will lose all power when you can see that. You will never take him seriously again, ever. Nothing he says, no threat coming out of his mouth will do anything when you're there. He could literally say, I'm going to kill all the pigs and then I'm going to kill you. And you'll be like, okay, Dad. I mean, you're clearly moved. You'll do what you need to, but it won't hold you hostage ever again. Something that radically extreme.
Right.
You'll just be like, he is a sick person. You will never again do what he tells you to do. For those reasons, right? Like I said, this isn't like a you don't ever comply to anybody. This is like, there's a balance around when you become someone else's slave compliance. As if it's your responsibility for them to be safe and at ease, right? Do you see how you become that narcissistic supply? Because he's not going to take he's not taking responsibility. If he did, he would have to be vulnerable and humble and willing to admit that maybe he's not the best. That would be like giving up his narcotic, right? I'd have to give up my narcotic of I'm special. That's what it seems like. So.
Wow. This morning he had one of the girls in the office. He's supposed to come to me if he needs motorcycle stuff done. But he went to them probably because he knew I wouldn't. I'd say something, but like he wanted these 8x10s, all these 8x10s printed of his motorcycles, and And all I could think was dick pics. Then.
That's hilarious. But yeah, that's, you could say that's his narcotic. He needs someone to say you're special. It's like an extension of him. It's how he's that inner sense of specialness. It's projecting out, and he's trying to use objects as a projection of what he thinks is him. And that's what he's done with you. The business is a projection of him. That's why I said there is no you. You don't exist in that world. You're just a slave to what he needs in the end to feel good. Anyways,
and I get it now. Like, he keeps saying he's going to close his collection. And I get it now why he's struggling with that. Because if he sells his collection, he's selling, like, part of him is gone.
Yeah, well, and totally. And he's selling, in a sense, one of the ways that he proves his specialness. So what's he going to tell people now? Oh, I used to have a motorcycle collection. He's selling something that he put on his resume.
Yeah.
He must be getting ready to die.
Yeah. Well, he tells me he could die any day, but he's been telling me that literally since he was probably in his late 40s. So he's just literally manipulating the hell out of you with fear and like, I'm so special and you're going to regret when I die and you're going to miss me because I'm why you're alive and you can't even exist without me. Yeah. Again, claiming ownership of you as if you're an extension of him. Just keep that in mind. Yeah. You are an extension of him. So you cannot have your own Michelle. You can't have a soul. You don't exist. Right? That, you need to feel that out. Like, this can happen with religious indoctrination too. Keep in mind. It's like, I can't be me. I have to be these religious ideologies. It's an extension of my parents' radicalism, which is how they're, were raised. So I couldn't be Robin. I had to be the religion. I had to talk that way, dress that way. There was no real authentic self. It is like growing up in a totalitarian environment or authoritarian environment. There's no exposure to, that's the other thing. I don't know if this happened to you at all, but you don't really get exposed to any other concepts, politics, or belief systems. When you're engaged with a totalitarian narcissist like that, you're literally with Hitler, same psychology to some degree. You're not allowed to think any different. And so it becomes very rage-induced and forceful belief indoctrination. Okay? So it's like cult mentality. But you don't realize it's actually generational cult mentality, and it's largely accepted across the United States. This type of mentality. Okay? In the diet industry.
All of it. The religious industry, the body image. It's barely the body image industry. The diet industry, I find, it's like those are the women who have Stockholm Syndrome selling how to abuse yourself. But really, why are we abusing ourselves? Who are we doing that for?
For the body image.
Which is for who?
For, I don't know.
Male penis issues.
Oh,
I mean, you're doing it because that's seen as physically attractive to who?
Yeah.
Men. It's not a male. It's not a female thing. It's a female male thing. Women sell it because they have little brainwashing and indoctrination around your role as a woman is to make sure that a man will accept you. And in order for you to do that, you have to, again, it's like you become the extension of the male version of what attractive is. It's very predictable based on porn.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of this, it's like, so a lot of the studies around this issue is around the misogyny that was occurring at your dad's time. It's very male supremacy. It's called gender supremacy, male supremacy. Females are inferior. It is their job to accommodate to us because we're superior. They can't live without us. And that was taught. And guess what? And you believed it and said, okay, I have to accommodate so that I can prove my worth, so that my father will accept me, so that men will accept me. How do I prove myself to men? Because ultimately they're the superior gender. That was taught.
I grew up where my mom made lunch for all the farmhands and Dad, and once the men sat down, and whether it was them or had a family or just our family, once the man or men sat down, they never got up again. If they needed something, we all hopped up to get it. And I can so clearly remember having a friend over, and I was probably in high school, and she said, "Why do you get up every time they need something?" And I was like,
that's what we're supposed to do?
Yeah, that's normal.
Well, it's normal if you believe in male supremacy, right? And so when you look at body image, you can look at the generations and centuries. Much of it at times is based on the male sexual drive and the idea that women have to comply in order to survive. That if, when it comes to that third hierarchy of need, the only way for you to be accepted as a woman is to be an extension of the man's penis.
Yeah.
You have to accommodate to it. So whatever will get him to be attracted to you, that's your role. So the whole concept of body image in general is based on that, with thin supremacy, specific to thin supremacy or foot binding, or even corsets, or, it goes on and on and on. There's also body image, religiosity body image too, that takes on a different role, which is usually anti-sex. So do everything you can to avoid sex. There were generations that literally would pluck their eyelashes because they were seen as too sexual. As if you have eyelashes, a man's going to want to have sex with you. And that means you're a big problem. You're the sinner for having eyelashes.
Wow.
So it always is, you're the co-narcissist to your narcissistic, slave owner, which is a man. And if you don't comply to that man, you're going to die because you can't handle shit. So it is you could say a programmed wire in our survival mechanisms to want to comply to someone who's aggressive, abusive. That's why that gets triggered. The syndrome gets triggered, right? How do you come out of that? Well, It's hard if your livelihood is constantly being threatened, right? That's also called corporate Stockholm syndrome, where they've seen this in work environments where an employee will adapt around an abusive employer that constantly threatens their income. Similarly to a battered wife.
I can see that.
And you stay in horrific environments because they're literally providing you, I'll give you a little bit of money, but then they just abuse the living hell out of you so that you keep your mouth shut. Don't ever tell anybody what's really going on. And they'll use you'll never get a job again because we're going to tell them what you're doing. All of that, you can see that type of environment where in order to survive, you comply. You reason and rationalize around that. You have cognitive dissonance. How do you do this when your reality is conflicting with your heart and soul? Well, you have to rationalize it. And that's what cognitive dissonance is. Is this even helping you? I feel like I'm just brain dumping right now.
No, like when you said that I'm an extension of him, the image in my head was that we were Siamese twins and that I somehow got to cut him away from me. And so...
Well, one way to see it is you've accommodated to him and all of his needs. So you could say you've had to become an extension of him. You've had to work as hard as he thinks you should work. You're having to do everything he needs you to do. All of his problems become your problems. So do you see how there's an extension there? So you become what he lacks.
Oh, gotcha.
Right? It's not necessarily a Siamese twin as much as it is you are like an extension, or like you've become what he lacks. You have to do what he says because he'll hurt you. He has hurt you, you know. Throw huge fits, you know, and you can see your mom probably is similar in that kind of a co-narcissistic response, which is, you know, and again, there's little bits of crumbs that he throws, and you think, oh, he loves me, and then he's the first person to, you know, wring your neck. He's got his hands, you know, wrapped around your neck. So what are you gonna do? Anyway, so what do? How are you gonna recover? Because you could look at your, you can say, okay, I'm showing signs of, you know, complex PTSD. It's been a long time I've had these issues, and you're starting to kind of lose touch with yourself. That hollow, I don't know who I have, no sense of me. There is no me. I don't even exist. There's no point.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are what, you know, I felt that way too. That is actual in the language of how to look at, you know, complex PTSD or borderline personality. You would be diagnosed with borderline personality. But to me, that's like, it's coincides so closely with complex PTSD, which isn't actually in the book of diagnoses yet. But it's like, and Stockholm Syndrome. Stockholm Syndrome, complex PTSD, it basically is borderline personality disorder.
Well, they did the bipolar test on me, and I would have a positive diagnosis of bipolar, but my therapist thinks it's more the anxiety. That it's not really bipolar. Anxiety.
Yeah. Can you see how all these like diagnoses are basically like, these are symptoms. these are symptoms of this issue, and we can sit here and go, which one is it? What does that matter? What's the solution, Michelle? What's your solution here? Like, because again, it feels like you're trapped. There's an entrapment. It feels impossible to escape. Right? But
yeah.
So, but is it really impossible? Where is it that you are allowing it? Right? You can go. That's the point at which you have to see, right? That you do have a choice. You actually do have a choice.
Right.
But the choice that you have is to be rejected, abandoned, disapproved of, live on the streets. I mean, all those things that he's threatened you. Whatever it is, you have to say, I'd rather that. I'd rather that.
Yeah. I'd rather people think I'm stupid.
Totally. That I failed. I have failed. That I couldn't handle this. But we've talked about that a lot, right?
Yeah.
Now feel it out now after you kind of hit bottom. How does it feel like, you know, because I know you've heard it and we've talked about it, but it may not have sunk in because you couldn't let it sink in.
Right. And this time it's sinking in. This time
you're absorbing it.
Feels right.
Yeah, it's not just a mental idea that you can see and you get. It's now like that right there is what I have to do. There's a do behind it, right?
Yeah, it's like what I have to do to survive. It's what I have to do to thrive.
It's escaping. It's not surviving anymore. You've been surviving.
Oh, yeah.
It's what you need to do to get out, to stop, to leave, to escape. It's actually not a escape by denial. It's like to never experience this again, even with the same circumstance. Like, we don't have to change the circumstance. You don't have to change your dad, but how do you not get involved that way? So do you see what I'm saying? It's like a matter of words here.
And I think that's where I was going with going to his house instead of having him come to the office, was that separation of, okay, I'm bringing this to you. This is what I need you to know. And now I'm going to go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me that is separating myself and
okay, well, let's
basically taking the reins.
Okay, so let's take I don't know the answer to this, but let's look at this from a distance. Is that accommodating to him still?
No.
Is it is it like creating a boundary?
Yes.
Okay. Like,
yeah. Accommodating him would be saying, can you come and sit with me at the office for an hour every day? And he would be like, yeah, they can't survive without me. They've got to have me there.
They need me. I'm the king here. I'm going to go in there and show them what I got. And they're going to feel like pieces of shit because that's how I'm going to feel good about myself. You guys suck. You don't even know what you're doing. And then I'll leave.
And me going to him, I think, in my mind says, I'm in control of this situation. I know what I'm doing. This is the information I need you to have. And now I'm going back to where I'm taking care of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and knowing no matter what he says, it doesn't change anything.
Right. It feels exactly like a boundary to me.
Yeah. Okay. Then that's what you should do. It should feel like you can, and you've got it, and you can handle it.
Yeah.
Like, what can you say? What can he say to you that's going to derail you?
The thing that he always said that kind of derailed me was when he said, "You just want complete control, and you don't even want me in the picture."
Why can't you say yes?
Said, well, I'm ready to say yes.
Okay, I was gonna say, what's wrong with that?
You
know what I mean? Like that's a threat. Like that's a put down. Like.
Right.
You know what? That makes me think that he was threatening that because that's what he doesn't want. But what's wrong with that? So if you comply to that, like if you go, no, I'm not, that's like saying, I agree. That's the wrong thing to do. It's for me to take control and to let you go. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
So but if you were to say, yeah, that's right. That's exactly what we're doing. What would he say to that?
I don't know, but that's what I'm prepared to say.
Yeah, well.
I'm not sure what he'll say.
But you see what I mean? Like, what can he say to that? If you're like, yes, that's exactly what we're doing.
Right.
And for good reason. And for good reason.
Yeah.
We're moving on.
Yeah.
You're right, Dad.
Yeah.
You know, and you can say, you did a good job. I know what I'm doing. You taught me so much. And you're right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He might throw a fit like a little kid. And you're like, well, your time's over, Dad. Sorry.
And how he reacts is not my business.
It really isn't, you know.
Yeah, that's his business.
Yeah, he can think what he wants. Yeah, he can think it's about him and it's personal and it's emotional. And if you agree with him, you're going to get emotional too. Again, his biggest threat is say it again.
You don't want me there anymore. You just want complete control.
The answer is yes.
Yes, I do.
And yes. You're right, Dad. We don't want you here anymore.
Yep.
And someone has to take care of business. So, don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
It can be matter of fact. It doesn't have to be derogatory. It can just be the yes. That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's just, and it is, honestly, it is the natural progression of the business and of him and of me. Mm-hmm. It's just natural progression.
Yeah. So if you think that he's credible, that he's competent, that he's psychologically aware and competent, what's going to happen?
I will feel bad.
Yep.
And I'll go backwards and
yes. Yeah. And you're going to go through the same shit.
Yep. Again and again.
Yeah. It makes you really question, like, why? I want to ask you this question just for you to ask yourself this. Why didn't you ever question his sanity? That in no way is implying anything. I just want to open the question up to see if there is an answer. There may not be an answer. And there's no badness to it. I'm not.
Because I think I knew what that answer was to what his sanity is, and I was trying to protect him from himself and trying to protect all of us around him from him.
By not actually addressing the truth. Right? So that right there is absolutely cognitive dissonance. So when you look at stuff like, yes, so there's the truth. That hurts. It sucks. And then there is the idea you want to maintain.
Yeah.
So cognitive dissonance is why people justify, rationalize, reason. Well, he's just had a really hard upbringing, and he really isn't all that bad. He just has a really hard time. You see how you minimize the behavior, and then and you maximize a story around it so that it's accepted.
Yep.
That is so understandable. Under the fact that he was your biggest. Imagine this person can cause the most damage, harm. It literally typically it's the abuser, the person that is constantly abusing everybody. You become fearful and accommodating to make sure they don't have those outbursts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So, how I used to I clean up the mess, clean up the mess, clean up the mess, clean up the mess. Right? And in doing so, if you were to allow him to be exposed as a complete and total asshole, the illusion is that everything will fall apart.
He did this again just recently. There was a vendor here, a representative of a work comp group, and he went into our HR's office and just berated the guy, just about, you guys are only for the beef industry and blah, and he's just on and on, and just
abusive.
It was yes. And
you're only for the bit. That's like saying, that is literally like saying, please tell me you love me. By saying, you don't like me, you like them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very childish. It's like saying, you don't like me here. You're right, we don't.
I was like, Dad, we need to talk right now in my office. And so he came down and he said, what's wrong? What happened? I said, you were being horrible to that person in there. It is not their, they didn't cause this. You cannot talk to people like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he just, and so he went down and apologized to the guy.
Wow, that was a big deal.
Yeah. And especially after he thought about it for a few minutes, I know it's not your fault, but the way it used to be. And the guy's like, yeah, I know. We're trying to change that image. That's why I'm here.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That right there.
What?
That right there. That feeling you probably had, like your hair rose, your stomach started aching as you're hearing him treat someone that way.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. He's attacking someone in a passive-aggressive way. You don't care about us. Basically saying, tell me why you like me, and then we'll talk.
Yep.
It's like so absolutely childish, like special.
Yeah.
But someone who thinks that your dad is legitimate actually thinks it's my job to make sure he knows that we're not doing that. And so think of the amount of work involved in that. Just making your dad not feel that way.
Oh, he is.
But the problem is no one's questioning his rationale, right? So
Right.
if you don't question his rationale, you're going to go, no, that's not true. Let me tell. You're constantly on defense. Yeah, it is.
That is, everybody around him.
Dude, I'm getting diabetes just talking about it right now.
Have you read that book? You know those YouTube videos you sent me about narcissism?
Oh, I love that guy. Yeah, he's amazing.
Yes, Have you read that book he wrote when, or maybe he didn't write it, but it's when he was killing me?
That's the book he wrote.
Have you read that?
Nuh-uh.
Okay. I think I'm going to read that.
You should.
And then I'm going to...
His work is so specific. His work is very specifically around the co-narcissist.
Okay, I really need to read that.
Yes, you do. The person who has to take care of the person that thinks my shit don't stink, and if it does, you clean it up.
Yeah.
It's your fault. Type of.
Yeah. Awesome. We work with a financial consultant that has clients across the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he's never met anyone like my dad.
Really? I'm surprised to hear that.
Yeah. He's a special kind of special.
Wow. Well, and you know what? You have to recognize that he has been accommodated for a very long time, and that the accommodation and the tug of war, someone's playing tug of war with him, and that person is you.
Yeah.
And the only reason that, yeah. And it's time to recover yourself. So one way to see recovery is not about, of course, of acknowledging and recognizing that this, first of all, your dad would have done this to anybody. So if you didn't participate in the work, he would have abused someone in that environment the same way.
Yeah.
So
I see that.
Recognize it has nothing to do with you. And because you are his daughter and he's your father, your psychological Stockholm syndrome, battered wife syndrome, same thing, is probably far worse, because someone who would have been employed for this work at some point would have left. Alcoholism probably they would have had an alcoholic problem. They would have had all sorts of substance abuse issues, for sure, because you have to somehow cope, right? It's no different than your eating disorder coping mechanism. It's very similar, actually. Yeah. So can you see how those are downline issues?
Yeah.
So we can diagnose you with an eating disorder, we can diagnose you with depression, we could diagnose you with all this shit, but all of that is like, why are we looking at the end result when there is this going on at the core? Like, you've lost touch with your whole concept of who you are. What's your purpose in life? Because it's always been about your dad, right? So with your own personal willingness to you are going to have to start over with, it's going to feel like you're a baby. I mean, that's how, right? Who are you? What do you want to do with your life? Like, what is the point? Going back to, you're not a rescuer. That wasn't your role. That wasn't supposed to be your role. That's what you've done.
Yeah.
You know? How do you pick up the pieces when the pieces are really just shards of your dad? I mean, it's like, you have to start over with, I don't want to pick up the pieces that used to be how I dealt with my dad. That was the old me. That really wasn't me. That was him, actually an extension of him.
Oh, I like that visual.
Yeah, you want nothing to pick up.
Yeah, my first thought was, I don't want to pick those up.
Right? Because those are broken pieces of what he told you had to be so that he was special and was safe from anything. I mean, those pieces are what creates the diabetes to come back. It's like, panics, all the anxiety that you've been diagnosed with, that's one of those pieces on the ground. It has nothing to do with you. That has to do with the fact that you're a slave to some dude who is constantly attacking you.
Yeah, and like I have so little self-worth.
Well, yeah, because you don't. It's not.
Self-worth.
Of course, you can see that why, right? There is no
Yep.
self. You have no self. So how are you going to have worth if there is no you?
Yeah.
So it's not about. So here's where I want to position you to see this. It's not that you don't love yourself. It's you don't know what that is to love. It's like there is no sense of self.
Yes.
So it's not that you're not loving. It's just that you don't know what it is. Because it's...
And it feels... Go ahead.
No, I'm listening to you because you process through these feelings.
It feels like a void. Like I don't know... I don't know what's there. And it's a little bit scary.
Yes. I so connect with you on that feeling. I've been there. I know exactly what you're describing. And it's very scary. And it needs to be covered up. It needs to be filled in. It needs to be, that right there. Right?
But what it really needs is just a jump.
Well, what it needs is you need to recognize that it actually doesn't even exist. It's only there if you believe that you are inadequate. It's your inadequacy. That's what that is. You've never questioned that.
Yeah.
Ever. So one of the things... I know. So that's why it's like that's why it's black. That's why you're like, I don't know why it's there. It's just there. How do I get rid of it? You never question. Yeah. So you spend all of your energy trying to fill it up, trying to cover it up. I mean, all of you can say your behaviors. We could diagnose those behaviors, but all of those are actually intended to just get rid of that hole. Black abyss of it's like a black hole. And who wouldn't do that?
Yeah.
Right? Who wouldn't be obsessive compulsive about their weight? If you think that that's going to get rid of that hole, you're going to do it. Anybody would do it. Yeah. Your therapist would do the same thing. Everybody and anybody with that feeling, believing that, doing these things are going to make it better, why wouldn't you do it? And the bigger the hole and the deeper the hole and the more scary the hole, the more obsessive compulsive your behavior is. So it's really a reflection of that hole, not you as a being.
Yeah.
So for instance, if you believe that being thinner or being healthier is going to make that go away, can you see if it's a big, dark, massively sucking hole that it's going to require pinpoint precision obsession on what it's going to take to be thinner and healthier?
And boy, did I do that and do it well.
Right? I know. It doesn't. Yeah. You just now have insanity. You're just now exhausted. I mean, you're exhausted. You've exhausted all of that survival. But you could see if you believe it and you get temporary relief because there's moments of gratification. It's like the crumbs. You get a little bit of crumbs here and there that you go, okay, I'm going to keep on doing this. This will make me feel at some point. And it's just like extreme because your void in there is extreme. So to me, when someone is like, okay, they're clearly showing symptoms of obsession and compulsion, to me, that's like, oh, that's a big void in there. They got a big, huge black hole. It's not a tiny little black hole. It may have started that way, but now it's massive. And you are really working your ass off to try to fix it. So you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Right? You can look at that and go, I was doing the right thing. Under those circumstances, to suggest that someone shouldn't go pull weeds in the middle of the night, that's abuse.
Oh, yeah.
Right? No wonder you'll get enraged if someone gets in your way. They have no idea what you're trying to, cover up, fill in.
Trying to get by that moment.
Totally. And you have to do this to just feel neutral. Again, someone gets in your way, you're not going to be kind about it. You're going to be like, get out of my fucking way. It's a rage. It's a survival rage, right?
Yeah.
And I knew, and when I was in that, I knew I was off my rocker. I didn't know, I couldn't stop myself. Right?
Yeah, I literally could not stop myself. Like, I would, there is that rage there, like,
if something gets in your way
out there, in 2 minutes, I'm gonna lose my shit. Like, I gotta go.
I have to do it. Yeah, that feeling. So, but again, recognize that feeling is coming from not looking at this void, what it is. So what it really is a sense of powerlessness, For me, it was, I recall when I was in there and recovering, I recalled it was like, oh, I've had this since I was a child. Like when I really looked at it and wanted to get to know it, it was like, it was the times I really needed love and affection, and I didn't get it.
Oh.
From childhood, like lack of touch, lack of affection. But here's what I also realized. I'm the only one that's aware of my inner space. So my parents didn't know that was there. They have no clue.
Yeah.
And I was a child. I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't know how to say, Mom, I'm like, I need you to hug me. I need to feel safe and protected. I just need to feel included. No child has a voice to even know how to express that feeling. It just is a feeling, and no parent. And I remember feeling like my parents didn't do that for me. And there was a sense of like, they might like victimhood in that. Although it wasn't a big issue for me, the victimhood, it still was like, it made me feel that I had to find someone else to fill that up.
Right.
Because my parents weren't.
Yep.
So I sought male attention. Being, that body image was like my way of, I can do it for myself. So I'm not questioning the void. I'm not at all. I'm thinking I could fix it with something else. Right. So I went to body image thinking I don't need someone else. And what's amazing about body image or any alcoholism, any type of like addiction, if you want to call it that, is you're still not questioning the void. But the beauty of it when it becomes your personal coping mechanism, when it's not another human being, is you can fill that void as deep as it is, as wide as it is, whenever you need it to the intensity it's needed. I can go exercise as deep and as wide and as long as that void needs it. You can go pick weeds, clean your house. You can think, because you can just do it when you need it.
Yeah.
So can you see how that actually makes it so much worse?
Yeah. That just, you understand exactly where I was.
That's because I've been there, dearie.
Yeah.
This comes from like, here, let me tell you what I felt like. Can you connect? And so what I realized too is that that was the choice. That was where the choice is. You have a choice, right? It's so, what's amazing to me is this didn't come to me until I was getting ready to kill myself, right? And I was willing to look at it. Again, hitting bottom, whatever that bottom is, you might have hit it. So now you're actually willing to look at it. But before it was too scary to look at. It's easier to go work for 2 hours in the yard in the middle of the night.
Right.
It's easier to go for a run at 3 a.m. It's easier to go puke my food up. It's easier to be bulimic.
Yeah.
Even though it comes at all these costs. It's like, I'm so afraid to look at that hole, that void, because it feels like I'm going to get sucked into it like a black hole. But you're the only one that knows when it's there, when it shows up, how big and deep and wide. And guess who's the only person, truthfully, that can express it? Not avoid it. So that's where things have to switch. It's no longer I got to avoid that. It's like, why don't we express what's in that void? Because there's a story in it. There's a voice that needs to talk, right? And for me, it was, this is what I realized that hole was, my desire to feel loved. I just wanted to feel loved. I just wanted to feel valued. That's the funny thing. That's what I was afraid of.
You know, I told Nick last night that we try to go to the cabin on Sunday nights and watch a movie and eat dinner together and just, be together. And I told Nick that it makes me happy when we're over there. And he said, why? And I said, because you make me feel important. And that's what it is. He makes me feel valued and loved and like there's nobody else on earth but just he and I, and that's what I'm looking for.
Yes, but is it his job to fill that up for you, like another codependent relationship?
No.
Yeah, but notice how he had no idea that's how you felt, because you're the only one that knows that space.
Yeah.
Like, there's not one other human being on the face of this planet that actually feels that space. You're the only one. So when it arises, who's the one that needs to talk to it? What does it need? How does it feel? Who's the one that can express it, understand it, and actually fill it up? Make it go away, to be honest with you. You're the only one. You're the only one. Yeah. And if you really take a look at this, the reason all of this insanity is occurring is because you're not looking at it.
Yeah.
You're not talking to it. You're not expressing it. Again, it's like the more love you need, the bigger it got. But don't look at that. And then thinking someone else should fulfill that the way you need it to, that's the human to human codependency. And when humans suck at it, you just go get a substance. Focus on your body image. Because you can use that substance. So it's still a codependent relationship. You're still not taking ownership of it. You're still not talking to it. You're still not even discussing what it is. All it's saying, if you look at it, Michelle, is I just want to feel loved. Lovable. So tell me this. Is that what it feels like? If you really look at it, it's this desire to feel lovable, to feel loved, to feel lovable. Okay, so if you're the only one that's experiencing that space and knows what that is and feels the depth of it, who's the best person to do the job?
Me.
Yep. That's it.
And I know what that feeling is that I need because I completely felt it last night. Like I was able to articulate it.
So what would happen if you did that for yourself when you needed it all the time in a way that just, you realize all it is just saying that you are. So here's how I got rid of that void. It's never been back. I don't have it anymore. It doesn't exist. Okay. So something so massive like what we're talking about, it's completely gone. It doesn't exist for me. That void, that hole, the black hole, it doesn't exist. It hasn't existed since. How can we get you to do the same?
That's what I need to work on this week.
Super simple. It's super simple. You talk to it. When it arises, you don't run away. You don't do anything. Don't fix it. Don't do shit. Because you're looking away from it. You're running from it. Wouldn't you agree? You've never actually turned toward it.
Yes.
Okay. So it's very important when that moment arises that you refuse escape. Don't run away. Don't do anything. And actually ask and feel it. Because that's the fear, is if I feel it, I'm going to for me, what it feels like is you'll die. If I feel this, I will be dismembered. I will be crushed into sand, blown into dust in the wind. I won't exist. It's like you're afraid of just non-existence, which the funny thing is, you don't exist because you're doing all these coping mechanisms that literally have killed you, right? Yeah. So you're afraid of what you got or what's there, and you're not afraid of the insanity and the horror story of what you've got trying to run from that.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, what do you have to lose by just facing that? If it sucks you, because it's always been there, it's like chasing you, comes up, you know, it's like, and then your whole life is like taken over by how you get rid of it, like your coping mechanisms. And your coping mechanisms really are the quote unquote diagnoses.
Yeah.
What they really should say is black hole vortex of non-existence. That's what she has.
That's what it feels like. Oh my God. And to finally be able to know, like, I want to cry right now, but I've got my next appointment waiting for me.
So?
Yeah,
let it out.
It's so amazing.
Well, because this is where you have a choice. This is your freedom point, right? You have a choice right there. It's a choice. Yeah. It should feel like there is I can be free if I'm willing to face that dark black hole. What do you got to lose?
Nothing.
Besides all those goddamn coping mechanisms that are torturous.
But what if my list doesn't get done? What if I don't get all this text picked up?
Oh, well. Right, those are your ways to distract yourself. You're trying to remove that darkness by working harder. Work harder.
Yep.
So by going into that hole and saying, what is this? What you're going to hear is, I'm just not good enough. And you guess who's the one that's going to talk to it?
Me.
And what do you think it needs to hear?
That it's loved.
You're good enough. Just the way you are. This is where you go into, you have this pure integrity. A heart of gold. Don't mean harm to anybody. That's good enough. Even if someone else, even if your dad, even if your mom, even if your husband, no one else recognizes that. By the way, they can't recognize it. They will never recognize it. Why?
Because they can't see inside me.
No, only you can. So the truth of the matter is, it's impossible for anybody else to validate you and the worth of your life. It is literally impossible. So the moment you do it, the moment you say, you know what? If all I am is weak and incapable, but that's the best I'm doing, is it good enough? If it's not good enough to you, guess what comes up? Oh, a black hole. I gotta run. I gotta prove myself.
Yep.
So, but if it is good enough for you, your honesty, your integrity, just your human nature as a child, right?
Yep.
Is that you have to be the one that says, that's good enough for me. I love me. And not in a, narcissistic, I'm super special way, right?
Right.
That's a different, not really love at all. That's narcissistic coping mechanism. That's someone running from their big hole inside their heart, right?
Right.
But when you say, you know what? Even in my inadequacies, my failures, this life I'm living is absolutely worth it. I'm good enough. What happens to that hole?
Goes away.
It disappears. It doesn't even exist. You're not covering it up. It doesn't exist.
Right. There's no hole anymore.
Yeah. So guess what happens to all of the drama that you're...
Yeah, because I was thinking, okay, what do I fill the hole with then?
You got to get it to not exist.
Yeah.
That's the goal. It's not to just continue to fill it up, continue to try to, I got to fix this. No. The whole completely goes away the moment you personally love and care for yourself. Even if you don't even know what you're loving and caring. It's as simple as, I know I have a good heart. It's like a simple, like, truth, the truth of me, what's here. No matter what the outcome, no matter what, it's like the truth of your heart and soul. You know what that is. You know what it feels like.
Yeah.
That's the truth. It's not empty. That's not hollow. But you've just never given it any credibility. You've never given it like, when does that come forward? Why isn't that there?
Yeah.
So it's still there. You still have that. You just didn't think that it was worth anything. What if that becomes what you use to like, am I good enough? Well, what if you bring that heart forward? What if that's good enough? And that's all you need.
That's so simple.
It is. It's almost like, really, that's it? That's all it's going to take?
I know. Like, there's nothing hard about this.
If it's not good enough, what happens?
The whole comes back.
It's real hard. I mean, this gets real complicated because you got a lot of diagnoses that need to be medicated. Right? Because your refusal to accept yourself as good enough. I mean, it's so fundamental. To me, these basic fundamentals of human beingness should be discussed from the elementary schools, kindergarten, fundamental concepts.
Yeah.
But they're not. Guess what is? You got to make money. You need to be thin. You got to be you got to be able to make a man's penis hard as soon as you're 13 years old and have boobs.
Top of the class.
Yeah, and you got to work and make sure that your parents think you're good enough. And if your parents don't think you're good enough, you got to make your religion think you're good enough. And if that's not good enough, then you got to work really hard and make sure your employer thinks you're good enough. I mean, it's just like, again, running from that hole. Don't let it suck you in. Don't let it suck you in. You're going to die. It's literally like a dismemberment. There's a non-existence. And all you got to do is say that little girl, that is the truth in there. That is the only thing that's truthful. That's the only thing that's real, is good enough. And I'm the one that falls in love with it. And I'm the one that protects it. Not my mom. She can't do that. Even if she could, she can't. It's not her job. She doesn't have, right? This is where you go, oh, I love my mom. She did the best she could of what she was aware of within herself. So if she can't fulfill her own whole darkness, how can she do it for you? Right. Or even teach you how to do it? Yeah. She's no clue. And your dad does it by fulfilling it with his job, his money, his motorcycles. He's teaching you that.
Yeah. Yep.
So you could actually say it's really warped love for him to say that you can't live without him. Oh, that's sweet.
Okay, I better go take care of this guy. This was amazing.
Okay, I've recorded it, so I'll send it to you.